everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about PlayStation and more specifically the PlayStation Portal. Earlier in the year I had a birthday and my amazing wife surprised me by gifting me a Portal. And so I wanted to share my experience with it and especially how it's got me playing more PlayStation than ever before. So in my house the order that the consoles are used probably goes something like this. Steam Deck is the system that I use the most, no questions at all about that. Second is pretty close between the Switch and my PC. The PC is used for those weekly gaming sessions with friends, but not much else. And the Switch, being another handheld, gets used a fair bit too. After that it's PlayStation 5, and then Xbox, I'm sorry to say, is way down the list, probably even less than things like handheld emulators that I just use from time to time. I really like the PS5, but just due to the fact that it's a home console, it sort of automatically means that it gets used less. It's wired up to the big TV in the living room, and we share that, so usually I'm fine with playing something handheld like the Steam Deck, while my wife uses the TV. This means that a lot of games these days I will choose to buy on Steam to play on the deck. Now there are of course exclusives on PlayStation 5 and actually they have been some of my favourite games over the last few years, but they don't really come around too often. Looking back through my play history on the PlayStation, there's been 2 Final Fantasy games, Rebirth and 16, God of War Ragnarok, Ghost of Tsushima, and I did finally finish Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy, but this sort of small list of, 5 or 6 games has probably been spread out over the last 1 to 2 years. So even though I love those games, you can see why it didn't add up to a huge amount of playtime on that console until now. When Sony first announced the Portal and explained what it was, there was plenty of grumbling online, and I can definitely see why this handheld wouldn't necessarily work for everybody. I'll talk a little bit about things that I do and don't like, but I love the PlayStation Portal and this has got me back into playing PlayStation in a big way. So let's talk a little bit about the system itself. Something I noticed straight away when I got this out of the box is actually just how light it is and how comfortable it feels in the hand. It makes sense that it would be lighter than Steam Deck given that it's a streaming system instead of something that's running games natively, but it's not really something that I thought about right away, so I was surprised by the weight difference. It's over 100 grams lighter than the Steam Deck OLED and nearly 150 grams lighter than the original Steam Deck, which combined with the ergonomics of the handles, it does make a difference. Don't get me wrong, the Steam Deck I don't find particularly uncomfortable to hold, but the ergonomics of the handles do help. That it gives you something extra to grip onto a bit more. I never found myself stretched out on my back on the sofa holding the Steam Deck above me. It's a bit too heavy for that and I'd be worried about dropping it, but with the Portal being lighter and being able to grip it even better, I have found myself doing that a few times. Once you're set up, then it's very easy to just pick up the Portal and use it. You switch it on, there's one button to connect to your PlayStation 5 which wakes it up from sleep mode, and then you're back to doing exactly what it was you were previously doing. I've timed it once or twice, and if you've got a game suspended, then it's basically around 30 seconds, maybe a few seconds more than that to get right back into gameplay, which I love. It probably takes at least twice that time just for my TV to turn on and then have woken up enough that I can change to the right input if I wanted to play on the big screen. Speaking of screens, I also really like the screen on the Portal. It's very bright and colourful and it's very nice having that 1080p resolution. You can tell a difference of course between playing on this and playing on a 4K HDR TV. Yeah, of course you can. But for playing handheld, there's not many better screens out there that I can think of. The only one that comes to mind that's better is the Lenovo Legion Go maybe. The Portal also has all of the DualSense features that I love when playing PlayStation games. The adaptive triggers work really well here. Now I have read that the more you use these features, the more it affects battery life. So I did turn the light bar off and I did lower the strength of the haptic feedback for a while. I lowered the strength of the haptic feedback down to medium when I first got the Portal just because I wanted to save a little bit of extra battery, but what I found was that actually the haptic feedback was then a bit muted and it wasn't quite as effective as I wanted. So about the time when I'm making this video, I have raised that back up to full strength just to sort of have a go and see if it doesn't impact battery too much. But when I had it on medium strength with that light bar off, I don't have to charge it very much at all. I shut the whole thing down overnight so it doesn't sort of drain battery when I'm definitely not going to be using it, and I must be getting something like 4 or 5 hours before I'm having to charge it. So I mentioned earlier in the video that when the Portal was first announced it was a bit divisive, and there are a couple of key reasons for that. First of all, you have to have a PS5 in the first place to use it, and then secondly, the Portal doesn't play anything natively. It only streams games from your home console, which of course means that your experience is hugely dependent on your internet connection. But for me, those haven't been too much of a downside. First of all, my connection seems to be pretty stable. It's definitely stable enough. I've got a fairly decent internet package, we never have too many devices streaming all at once, and I've also got the PS5 wired in by Ethernet cable. So that means it's very rare that I get any kind of lag or any drop in image quality, and there's even been times when I've been streaming the PlayStation and my wife's been streaming a TV show at the same time and it's run okay. Now it has happened once or twice that I have sort of like launched into it and I've gotten lag, but those were fixed just by me resetting the Portal. But when I'm just playing in the house on the sofa, I've been very impressed with it. And that really is my use case for having this system. Most of my handheld gaming on things like the Steam Deck or the Switch isn't necessarily done out of the house. I am still at home, but I'm often sat on the sofa in the living room while the TV is being used. I'd rather play my games handheld in the same room as everybody else rather than going to playing on my own somewhere else. For example, going to play on my PC upstairs, or maybe setting up another TV in another room and putting the consoles in there. I can still hang out and talk this way, and so for that purpose the PlayStation Portal has sort of slotted perfectly in alongside those other handheld systems for me, and it's allowed me to use my PlayStation way more than I ever did before. In the past there have been games like the recent Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that I've sort of said, look, I really want to play this, I'm going to use the TV a lot more for a while if that's okay, but then after that I'll barely turn the PlayStation on. Now though, the fact that I can play from time to time on the TV like normal, but also whenever I want on the Portal has got me really excited. I actually bought and finished the story of Spider-Man 2 since getting the Portal, which, fair enough, that is a game I really should have played earlier. I absolutely loved it. The PlayStation Spider-Man games are some of my favorites. Miles Morales is my only platinum trophy, although I am thinking of going for it with Spider-Man 2 now. I often stop playing games after I finish the story because even though the gameplay is still fun, I'm not always into the sort of busy work of ticking off everything needed to 100% a game, but playing those sort of checklist style extras on the handheld while, maybe watching something, it does help to counter the repetitiveness that these trophies often require. There's also more exclusives I'd like to get around to playing at some point. I never finished Horizon Zero Dawn or even started Forbidden West, and I hear Stellar Blade is pretty good as well. I know this isn't really the case, but because the connection holds steady enough and there's never really a drop in quality, the PlayStation Portal is starting to feel like a Steam Deck with better graphics, and I'm enjoying using it so much that I'm even starting to play other games on there, not just PlayStation exclusives. There's been plenty of times that I've caught myself thinking how nice the image quality is, and if there's a game that I can get on either PlayStation or Steam, then there's now a much stronger case for me picking it up on PlayStation. I've started Jedi Survivor recently, and I've been continuing a couple of games that I got a few months back but sort of half dropped, like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. I've also been wondering about trying Elden Ring again. I never finished it originally, but the DLC has got me tempted, and I had thought about picking up that DLC on Steam Deck. The performance on Steam Deck isn't awful, but I'm now leaning more towards getting it on PlayStation. It's got to be better on PlayStation, right? So I think I've been rambling a little bit, but just to sort of sum up why I love this so much, it's sort of turning into an ideal device for me. It's got that great handheld form factor of something like Steam Deck, but it feels like it's got the power of the PS5, and so that kind of makes it almost feel like a Steam Deck but with less compromise. I realise that this is only possible because I'm lucky enough to have a decent internet connection and it streams really smoothly, which won't be the case for everybody. And I like playing games handheld on Steam Deck a lot, but there are definitely times and certain games that I want to be able to play on the big screen sometimes without sacrificing performance, or maybe I just want a little more power in handheld play. Cyberpunk is a good example of this. I really like playing it on the Steam Deck, but if you watch the video that I did, the performance is fine, but you definitely could want more performance from time to time. And so yeah, occasionally I did want it to look a little better or have a little higher frame rate, or maybe from time to time if the TV was free, I thought, yeah, I'd like to play it on the TV, but I knew that it would either look so pixely if I kept the 800p resolution, or if I increased the resolution, then performance would take a big hit. If I played on PS5 though, I know that I wouldn't have that problem. It would look better on the Portal, and if I wanted to play on the big screen, I wouldn't be worried about losing performance because, then it's just running natively on the PS5. Now I know that it's only because the connection is smooth and I don't really have a want or need to take it outside of the house, but yeah, like I said, in my use case, it almost feels like an upgrade to the Steam Deck, and that's why I'm enjoying it so much. So I realised that I've been heaping praise onto the Portal, and it's not necessarily the ideal device for everybody in every situation. It's quite expensive to buy anyway, plus you need to have already got a PS5 and you need a stable internet connection, and while I'm not that bothered about taking it out of the house, for somebody else who is, it might not be possible to get a great internet connection everywhere that you go. There are also two other small annoyances that I wanted to bring up. The first one is that I've actually been buying all of my PlayStation 5 games physically. When the PS5 first came out and games started to ramp up to £70, I made the decision to switch over to buying discs only. Like many of you, I'm sure there are so many games over the years that I've bought digitally and then barely played or didn't enjoy. And this kind of annoyed me enough when it was £40 for a game, but at £70 I just thought that I needed to have that option to maybe trade it in and, you know, get at least some of my money back if I ended up not liking a game. Nintendo games are still buy digitally. I use the game vouchers on the Nintendo store. I don't buy too many Nintendo games, and also, you know, they don't really go down in price, so I don't feel like there's much of a chance to get them cheaper than that unless I wait for years and years and years. But yeah, my entire PS5 collection is physical, with the exception of some certain ones that I happen to get them really cheap on sale from the PlayStation Store. You obviously can't swap discs using the Portal, and I know that getting up to swap games over isn't a huge deal, but it is something that would be a little bit easier with a digital library, especially if you're a few rooms away or even in a completely separate location. You'd sort of be stuck playing the disc that was in your console. There is a little bit of a silver lining with this one though, and there were a few times when I'd sort of considered playing something other than Spider-Man, and then I couldn't be bothered to get up to swap the discs, and so I played a little bit more Spider-Man and got back into it and ended up making a fair bit more progress in the story instead. Now this probably sounds incredibly lazy, that I just couldn't be bothered to get up to change discs, and yeah, sure, it probably is. But on the other hand, it could be a little bit helpful for sticking to and finishing some of those games that you really want to get through. I do tend to swap around games when I'm playing. If I have, say, I don't know, a couple of hours to play, I won't necessarily play one game for a couple of hours. I'll bounce between 2 or 3, and I've not necessarily thought that that was a good habit, so maybe this will help me to stick to one game. So that's the first annoyance, and it is only a small one, and not everybody will have physical only collections, plus it does have that silver lining of, you know, maybe it makes you stick to playing certain games that you want to play. This final point though is a fair chunk more annoying though, and that is the situation with Bluetooth headphones. You cannot connect Bluetooth headphones to the PlayStation Portal. I don't know if Sony ever gave an official reason for this, and the cynic in me does kind of think that Sony just wanted to push its own products instead. There is a 3.5mm headphone jack in the back of the Portal, so wired headphones are an option. I've got a cheap pair of wired earbuds lying around that I plug in sometimes, and they do get their job done, but they don't have their best quality. Another option I have is that I can wire in my Bluetooth headphones, and these do sound a lot better, but then of course I am lost to the world if anybody tries to talk to me. This is the one thing about the PlayStation Portal that I really wish worked differently. On Steam Deck it's so easy. I've got my AirPods paired up to the Steam Deck and I just pop one in. The sound quality is great, but on PlayStation Portal I'm forced to go wired, and because of the wired headphones that I've got, I have to sort of choose between whether I want to go for better sound quality or using those earbuds and having one ear open. Also, I'm so used to everything being wireless now, I do find myself getting tangled from time to time because I forget that I'm sort of wired in. Of course, in their graciousness, Sony does offer a couple of solutions. You can use their PlayStation Link software to connect either their own headphones or earbuds wirelessly, but of course then you have to buy something else. It's actually very strange because my headphones are actually Sony headphones, but they're not the official PlayStation Sony headphones, so they don't have this PlayStation Link software option to connect. So I would have to go out and buy some entirely new headphones if I wanted to wirelessly listen to the Portal. I'd maybe be tempted by the earbuds, but they're so expensive. They're over £150, which feels like way too much money for something that I only need for a single device, and you know, I don't even know if the sound quality on them is any good. So those are the two downsides. So the Portal isn't perfect, but I can get over those, and so I'm loving using this device. I know it won't work for everybody, but it's absolutely perfect for the scenario that I want to use it, and it's getting me back into playing PlayStation games. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know anybody else who has a Portal, and I'd love to talk about it some more, so please comment down below, you know, what games you're playing, what you love about the Portal, and just anything else that you want to bring up about it. Now that I'm playing more games on PlayStation, do you want to see more videos about that? Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.